The final piece that we're going to make is the control center. Similar to the notification center, we're just going to be creating a panel that you can slide up from the bottom that will include some fun functionalities such as working sliders and a kind of a backlight adjuster dimmer that sort of works. So let's get started on that. The first thing we're going to do is make our shell container for the control center. We're going to size this at 320, the width of it, and make this 534 pixels high. Control center is not that big, so it doesn't have to be that high. So we'll make this transparent. And we're going to bring this down and position it at 532. So that we're going to have this draggable area where we can attach and move them up. So before we start placing our assets, we'll rename this to Control Center Container. And we're going to add a drag action to this, or interaction. Bring this in here, set this to vertical, and then we'll add a move animation to it so that if we let go of it, it'll go up to its position. So we'll call this move up on drag release, and it's going to be based on its own drag release with duration to final value, and we'll move its top up to 130. We're going to use a spring animation for this as well. We're going to set the friction to 40 and 400, just like we did in the notification center. Now we can place our asset into the container. So we'll come in here, grab CC panel, make sure we place it within the container, and we'll move it down to just to here, right at the bottom of the panel, or of the screen. So our container is slightly higher, so we can actually drag from here, and then it'll pull up from the bottom of the screen. So now we can come in here and place our swipe bar assets within the container. We have the swipe bar arrow, and we have the straight one. Now, looking back at this, I'm seeing that these swipe bars are different sizes than the ones that we're using in the control center and the notification center. For some reason, they seem to be slightly larger, so these ones that we want are 30 by 6. These other ones are 36 by 8. So let's go back to both of these old swipe bars, bottom swipe and top swipe. We'll resize these 30 to 6, 30 and 6. We'll place these both back at 145 in. The top bar is still going to be at 10 pixels down, so this will be 145 at 10. Bottom swipe would be 145 at 551. These will match up perfectly. Sorry about that. I'm not sure if maybe the assets I gave were just improper, but now these should be even. So we can bring the swipe bar arrow and bring it within the control center container and the straight one. And we're going to place the swipe bar at 145 and 19 pixels in. So it's right over this other swipe bar. It's going to be invisible for now, so we'll turn its transparency down. And we'll come back to this later, but we're going to add a tap interaction to this. The swipe bar arrow is going to be placed at 143 in, also 19 pixels down, so it'll be over that. And we're also going to set this to 0. And both of these are going to fade in when we start to drag the panel. So we're going to add a fade animation to both of these. We'll start with the arrow. We'll call this fade in on drag release. And this is going to be based off of control center containers drag release. To make it fade up to 100. And using that same animation duration that we did last time for all of our swipe bars, duration is going to be 0.25 seconds. We're also going to add a tap interaction to this because this is how we're going to close this panel. So we'll add that in there. And then we're going to add another fade animation that's going to be based off of when it's tapped. We're going to make it fade out when that button is hit. So we'll call this fade out on tap, based off of CC swipe bar arrows tap. Make it fade to 0. Linear at 0.25 seconds. So now you'll see if we drag this up, now it'll fade in, and if we tap it, it'll disappear. Now it's off position right now. We're going to get to the point where I'll explain why that is in just a minute. But first we need to complete the fade animations for the straight swipe bar as well, so that it fades in when the bent arrowed one is out. So we'll add a fade animation to this. We'll call this fade in on drag. Be based off control, center containers, drag start with duration to final value. Fade it up to 100 at 0.25 seconds. And it's going to fade out on release as well when the arrow fades in. So we'll call this fade out on release. Based off control center, drag release. Fade to 0 at 0.25 seconds. And then we're going to add one more. It's going to be fade out on tap. So when this is tapped, so we'll name this fade out on tap. And when it's be based off the swipe bars tap. Set this to 0.25 seconds animation or duration. So now if we start to drag, we will see that this swipe bar fades in, and if we release it, it fades out. Now we need to set one more fade animation to this arrow. We want it to fade out while this panel is being dragged. So we'll go back in here, add one more to the fade swipe bar arrow. Call this fade out on drag. Of course, it's based off of the control center's drag start. Fade this out to 0.25 seconds. So now we have that fade in. Now these switch out with each other. Now you see that the control center doesn't seem to be popping up all the way. It should be about here, and the swipe bars are off. Well, the reason for that is on the actual iOS control center, when you begin to drag, it sort of jumps up from the bottom up a little bit to where your fingertip is. So we're going to add that animation right now, and then that's going to fix the position for these swipe bars. So we'll go back, let's go to the panel. We're going to add a move animation to it. We'll call this move up on drag. Up on drag start. And this is going to be based off of its own drag start. And we'll move its top up to 10 pixels. We're going to keep a linear easing curve, 0.2 second duration. So now when we begin to tap, it shoots up and fades in. And it makes that swipe bar look really nice. With it fades out, it's good timing. So when we start to pull it, it fades in and replaces itself just like that. So now we need to make this move down. We set this arrow up as a button, so we need to make this move down when we tap that button. So we'll add another move animation. We'll call this move down on tap. This is going to be based off of the swipe bar, arrow, tap. And we will reset this position. So we're going to move the top down to actually 36. And And we'll use a linear easing curve, but we're going to switch this to 0.3 seconds duration, so it's slightly slower. Okay. So now if we pull this up, the control center will reposition itself when this button's tapped, just how it was set. So now we need to make the actual panel itself go off the screen. So we'll go back to the container and set these up. We'll add a move animation. This is also going to be move based on tap, move down on tap. And this is going to be based off swipe bar arrows, tap. And we'll set it to go back to the bottom where it was at 532, not completely off screen. And use our spring easing curve again at 40 friction, 400 tension. So we can pull this up, it's interactable, and when we tap on this button, it closes. Now we're going to go in and make our sliders. You'll notice that the backgrounds on this are transparent. The slider is actually cut out. What we're going to do is add some layers beneath it, black ones and some white ones. That way we can make the slider look like it's actually working properly. So we'll come in here. We'll do the music slider first. Create a small layer that fits behind this slit right here. We'll make it black. This isn't actually black. There we go. I had to change the RGB value to 000 because they don't actually have black in this panel. So go ahead and switch it, and we'll name this CC volume slider fill black. We'll bring it down in here, and we're going to set it below the panel. And then we'll just duplicate this. We're going to make the white one. I'll grab the layer, duplicate it, call this fill white, make it white, and now this placed right on top. Next we'll place in our slider handles so that we can make these layers work based off of the handles themselves. So we'll come in here, we'll grab our assets, we'll grab CC volume slider handle.png, pull it in here, and since it's actually really small, it's going to be really difficult to grab. We're going to create a layer that's an interactable layer to contain this button. So we'll come and make this small layer. We'll make this transparent. We'll just make a small square. Let's do 42 by 42. Place it right here over so the center is right over this container. Rename this layer to CC volume slider handle. Bring it into our container. And then we'll actually bring the PNG into that container. And we'll place it in the middle. These are going to be placed on top of the panel, just like that. Make sure these are positioned properly. I'm going to place the container for this at 240 and 244. Now we need to keep in mind that if you drag this up, you can see that the slider is not where it should be. The reason for this is because earlier we made this panel move and reposition based off the drag. So what we're seeing on this screen right here is not where it actually is going to be when we pull it up. Imagine it shifted. So all the stuff for the slider and the sliders in this needs to be 10 pixels up above where it should be sitting on here. So we'll come in here, and I'm actually going to move this handle to 240 at 244. This is if it's a 42 by 42 square for the right, on the right side. This is where you want these to be. And then we'll actually go back and move our backgrounds so they're right over here. So this is where we can imagine the slider is actually going to be. Move the black fill and the white fill. We'll reposition our slider handle just a little bit. So now if we look up, that's perfect. That's right in the right spot. And now we're going to be able to set it up so that we can drag this. So we'll come here on the slider handle container. We're going to add a drag interaction to this. It's going to be horizontal, and we're going to limit its position. Say that its minimum position is 36. Its max is 240, right where we have it at. We're not going to let it stretch. So now we can come in here and pull this, just like this. The next step to making this work is we need to tie this white fill to this drag handle. So we'll come here to the white fill, and we're going to add a move animation to this. We'll call this move with slide. It's going to be based off of the slider handle's drag position. We'll make it move continuously with right. We're going to reference the left edge and move, we'll say right 1. So now if we come in here, we drag, it looks like it's filling. So we actually need to reposition this fill just a little bit. We want it to be hidden behind the right. You can see now looking at it that it's actually extending past here. So what we'll do is we'll come in and just kind of drag this over to so that this right edge is at the middle. And we don't want it to cover over this sound icon, so we'll just pull this just a little bit. That should be good. We don't have to do this with the black layer because it's not going to be moving. Just like that. Great. So one more thing. We want to make these icons fill in. So they start out black and then they fade to white. You can see that now with this drag, this white layer is actually covering up the sound icon. So we're going to build these layers on top of this. We're going to create a small layer, just a small square. Place it over where the sound icon is, probably a bit lower right here. We'll call this CC volume icon black. This is lower volume, so volume low. Bring it from our container, and we'll place it above these fill layers. Come in here, make it black. So actually we're going to have to edit the RGB values to 0, 0, 0, 0. And now it's black. We'll duplicate this. Just make this, rename this so it's white. Make it white. And we're going to add some fade animations that are going to be based off of this movement. That way it fades in when we start to drag this slider. So we'll grab a fade animation. We'll call this just fade in. It's going to be based off of volume slider handles drag start with duration of final value. Tell it to go up to 100, and we'll just leave this duration. And we'll do one more fade animation. This will be fade out. Based off the same thing. Drag slider handle, drag release though. Fade out to 0. same animation duration. And then we need to make this start at 0% opacity so that we don't see it when we pull the control center up. So now if we come in, starts out as black. If we start to drag, fades into white. If we let go, fades out. We're gonna have to do this again for this other side over here. So that's easy. We're just gonna duplicate these. Easiest way, just come in here, we'll grab this, duplicate, duplicate. To keep these in order, I'm gonna move them this above. And we're gonna rename this to CC volume high, icon black, CC volume high, icon white. And we'll move both of these over to 269 pixels in. And they'll work the same. Since it's a duplication, they have the same animations. So now we can see both of these work perfectly. So that's it for the slider. We're going to do the same thing with the brightness, and that's going to be pretty simple. Easiest way to do it, we're just going to copy all of these backing layers and these icon layers, move them up to the brightness, and then we will redo this slider. The only thing is we're going to have to slightly change the range limit, because for some reason the slider, or the brightness slider, is smaller than the volume slider. So we'll come in here, keep track of these. Let's duplicate this the right side icon, black and white. Move these up together. We'll call this CC bright high icon white. And this one's going to be CC bright high icon black. And we'll move both of these up to 106 pixels down, 106 pixels down. And we'll move them in just a little bit more, 4 pixels to 265. That way we know they're covering it. I will do the same thing for the low icons. So we'll duplicate the black copy or layer, duplicate the white layer, pull these up here, rename these. So this will be CC bright low icon white, CC bright low icon black. At the same height, we'll move these up to 106. And we'll move both of these over to a few pixels in. Let's just go to 22. And then one more for the slider backing. Come down here to where the slider fills are. Duplicate both of these, the black one and the white one. Move these up together. We'll rename this CC brightness slider fill white, and this other copy, CC brightness slider fill black. And we'll move these up just as well, 106 for both of them. Now you can see they're slightly wider than we need it to be, so we can just trim this down. We'll just grab this, pull it over, the white one and the black one, just so that we don't try to overlap. And now if we pull these up, we can see that our slider background and the icons will work. So now we're going to have to move in, add this handle, and we're going to make these animations work based off of our brightness slider handle. So we'll come into our assets, grab CC brightness slider handle, and similarly to the volume one, we're going to create another little container for it. So just make a new layer. Let's make this 42 by 42. Oops. make it transparent, and we'll move it right here so that's directly over the edge of our slider and up to here. Call this, rename this layer, CC brightness slider handle. Place our actual handle PNG inside of it, and we'll move it right here into the container. And we're going to place this brightness, this handle right here at position 237 at 99. That way it's right over. So we're going to come in here. Same thing, we're going to add a drag interaction to this. It's going to be horizontal. And we're going to limit its position 43 and the max current position of 237. We're going to not let it stretch past. That way when we bring this up, this slider works. So now we need to make our slider backer. Currently it's moving based off of the volume. It's the way we have it set up. We need to make it move based off of our brightness slider. So we'll make this slider fill, come back to it. Instead of being based on the slider handle or the volume slider handle, we'll make it move to a brightness slider handle. Reset this to drag position. It should automatically fill. So continue with rate. There, it works properly. And then we need to go back to our icon fills. So the brightness low icon white should work based off of slider handle, brightness slider handle, drag start. It's going to keep its same properties. And same with fade out, brightness slider handle, drag release. We're going to do the same thing with the white. Make it slide on brightness slider handle, drag start. And the fade out will be based off the brightness slider handle, drag release. See, this is placed properly on this thing, so we need to move this up 106. There we go. So now once this is loaded, bring it in. See that we have working sliders all around. Cool. So we're going to add one bit of functionality to this. We're going to add the brightness changing, the backlight adjustment work based off of this slider. Now it's not going to be the actual phone's backlight, of course. What we're going to do is actually just make the this background fade onto a black background behind it, and it's going to be based off the slider, and it's going to look really cool. So we'll come in here, we can close this up for now. We're going to add a layer, make it the size of our screen, change its color to black. So let's reset the RGB values to 0. We'll rename this just brightness background. And we will place it behind underneath wallpaper. So now it's at the very bottom layer behind our wallpaper. We're going to come and add a fade animation to the wallpaper itself. We'll call this, rename this to brightness. And it's going to be based off of the CC brightness slider handle drag position. We're going to have it move continuously with rate, or continuously to final value. And we're going to use the same constrictions that we had for the slider's movements itself. So 43 to 237. So we'll say it'll begin at 237 and at 43. Reference the left edge. And it doesn't fade completely to black, so we're going to tell it only to fade to 15%. That's as low as it'll get. So now if we open this up and we drag, see this background starts to fade out. Now we're going to go and do the same thing to the slide to unlock container since it's sitting on top of the background. We're just going to add a fade animation to it. Rename it to brightness. Based off of the brightness slider handle. Drag position. And it'll move continuously to final value. It'll begin at 237 to 43. We'll reference the left edge and fade it down to 15. And then one more time for our status bar. Just add a fade animation. We'll call this brightness. Based off of the slider handle. Drag position. Continuously to final value. 237 to 43. Reference the left edge. Down to 15. So now everything that's on this first panel will fade with our brightness slider. As soon as this loads up. Got it? There we go. Everything on this panel fades out. I'm not going to do this to the emergency call panel or the medical ID screen. Just because of the way that we nested these groups, we would have to do it to a lot of groups and different layers. Just to save time, we're not going to do that. If you wanted to, though, it's pretty easy. It's just you use the same fade animation, same principles. It would be nice if you could just copy and paste a fade animation or an animation of any type or interaction to make that work. But we're not going to go through and do this. We're just going to end it right here. And since we covered quite a bit today. So that's it for this tutorial. I hope that you guys have enjoyed all of it and had fun making this mock-up. Hopefully it helped you learn some new functionalities that you might not have known that you can do in Pixate. And hopefully maybe it gave you some ideas or help solve some problems for some of your own designs. Look in the future for some more tutorials that I'll be making. And I'll see you next time.